Embark on an epic journey through ancient myth where divine wrath, ruthless power struggles, and cataclysmic battles reshape the destiny of gods and men. Witness Marduk's betrayal, Enlil's stern judgment, and Ninurta's defiant challenge as celestial forces clash in a timeless saga of vengeance, fate, and cosmic wonder that echoes powerfully through the ages. Immerse in this celestial odyssey.
My heart is heavy, I am chanting dirges. These are the dirges that fill my heart with pain. How a blow has descended upon the land. The people were surrendered to the evil wind. The barns were abandoned, and the mines were emptied. How the cities have suffered beatings. The inhabitants struck by the evil wind have piled up one upon another like dead bodies. How the fields have been utterly devastated. The plants touched by the evil wind have become bone dry. How the rivers have been stricken with calamity. Now nothing swims within them, and their shining clear waters have begun to weep. The black-haired people of Sumer were emptied out. All living beings departed. Even the cattle and sheep emptied out Sumer. The tinkling sound of columns, emptied with a clatter, was silent. In those magnificent cities now only the wind whispers. The only scent is that of death. The temple that once soared skyward was emptied by the gods. No trace remains of lordship and royal command anymore. Staff and crown are gone. On the banks of the two great rivers, once lush and life-giving, the wild grasses have vanished. There is no one stepping onto the main roads, no one seeking or asking for a sign. The star that once shone over Sumer now makes it an abandoned desert. How a blow has struck the land, the nest of the gods and men. Upon that country, a calamity unknown to mankind descended. A plague unlike anything humans had ever seen, and if seen, would not allow one to live, had come. From the west to the east, across all lands, the destructive power of terror took hold. In the cities, the gods were as helpless as the people. In a distant plain, a storm arose, a storm, an evil wind. Upon its path, it placed the great calamity. A wind born in the west that emanates death turned its course toward the east, its route determined by fate. A storm that swallows like a deluge, not cleansed by water but by wind, not driven by surging waves but by poisonous air. It was not fate but destiny that created this. The great gods in the assembly were the cause of the great calamity. Enlil and Ninharsag permitted it. I was the only one pleading, "Let it cease." I showed proof day and night so that they might accept what the heavens commanded. But it was in vain. Enlil's warrior son, Ninurta, and my own son, Nergal, first poisoned, then released the weapons in the great plain. After the brilliance, they now lament in sorrow, saying they did not know that the evil wind would come. They now moan, "Who could have foreseen that the storm which spreads death, born in the west and turning its course to the east, would come?" The gods now lament. When the gods in their holy cities turned the course of the evil wind towards Sumer, they stood there, unbelieving, with astonished eyes. One after the other, the gods fled from their cities, leaving their temples to the wind. As poisonous clouds drew near, in my city, Eridu, I was utterly powerless to stop it. I ordered the people to flee to the open steppes. With my wife Ninki, I too abandoned the city. In the city of Nippur, at the site of the sky-earth junction, Enlil was likewise powerless to stop it. The evil wind was attacking Nippur. Enlil and his wife mounted their celestial boat and hastily departed. In Ur, in the royal city of Sumer, someone cried out to Enlil, "May Nannar help!" At the sight of the temple rising in 7 steps toward the sky, Nannar refused to heed the authority of destiny. My father, whose intervention was the cause, the great God who bestowed kingship upon Ur, cried out to Nannar, "Turn back the evil wind." The great God who ordains destinies implored Ur and its people. "Let them continue to extol you," he pleaded. Enlil answered his son Nannar, "O noble son, your magnificent city was offered kingship. It was not granted an eternal reign. Hold fast to your wife Ningal and flee from the city. Even I, who ordain destinies, cannot bend or twist the fate of the city." Thus my brother Enlil spoke. Alas, alas, this is not fate. Since the deluge that befell the gods and the earthlings, it has been the greatest calamity. Alas, this is not fate. The great deluge was destined, but the great calamity that came with the death-spreading cloud was not destined. It was caused by a broken oath and a decision taken in the assembly. It was created by the terror weapons. The poisoned weapons were unleashed not by fate but as the result of a decision. The dice were cast knowingly. They directed that destruction by those two sons toward my first son Marduk. Their hearts were filled with vengeance. "It is not Marduk's right to ascend to sovereignty," shouted Enlil's first son. "I will oppose him with weapons," declared Ninurta. Marduk's brother Nergal raised an army from among the people, proclaiming, "Babylon, the center of the earth, shall be." In the great assembly of the gods, venomous words spread from mouth to mouth. Day and night I raised my voice against it. I foretold well-being. Yet I did not take sides in the panic. For the second time, the people exalted his celestial image. I pleaded, "Why does this opposition continue? Have all the devices been checked? Has not the time of Marduk in the heavens come and reached?" I asked once again. My own son Ningishadda interpreted the signs of the heavens differently. I knew in my heart that he would never forgive the injustice that Marduk had done him. Enlil showed no mercy to Nannar, his son born on earth. "Marduk has taken my temple in the northern city as his dwelling," he said. Enlil's youngest son Ishkur demanded punishment. He said, "He forced the people on my lands to follow him." The wrath of Nannar's son Utu was directed at Nabu, the son of Marduk. The celestial chariots attempted to seize their place. Utu's twin Inanna was the angriest of all. She was still demanding the punishment of Marduk for having slain her beloved Dumuzi. Ninharsag, the mother of gods and men, turned her gaze away. "Why isn't Marduk here?" she said. That was all. My own son Gibel answered grimly, "Marduk has set aside all appeals. He claimed his superiority according to the signs of the heavens." "But this Marduk, who can be stopped with weapons?" shouted Enlil's first son Ninurta. Utu said it was about protecting the place of the celestial chariots. They must not fall into Marduk's hands. The lord of the lower region, Nergal, was ferociously demanding, "Allow these ancient terror weapons to be used for destruction." With incredulous eyes, I looked at my own son. Had he sworn falsely that a brother would not use terror weapons against another? Instead of consent, there was silence. In that silence, Enlil opened his mouth. "They must be punished. Those who do evil must be turned into wingless birds. Marduk and Nabu are depriving us of our inheritance. Let them also be left without the celestial chariots." "Let us scorch and destroy that place," shouted Ninurta. "Let me be the one to scorch it." An excited Nergal rose and shouted, "The cities of the wicked must also be overturned. Let me destroy the sinful cities. Henceforth let my name be the Annihilator." I bellowed, "No harm should befall the earthlings we have created, nor should the righteous burn alongside the sinners." My helper in creation, Ninharseg, also approved. The matter should be resolved solely among the gods, and no harm should come to humans. Anu in his celestial abode was listening carefully to these debates. The one who determines destinies, Anu, made his voice heard from his celestial realm. "Allow these terror weapons to be used this time. Let rocket ships annihilate the place, and let no harm come to humans." Enlil announced the decision thus: "Let Ninurta, Kavurachu, and Nergal be the annihilator as well. I will reveal to them the secret of the gods. I will show them where the terror weapons are hidden." Two sons, one mine and one his, were summoned into Enlil's inner chamber. As Nergal passed by me, he averted his gaze. I cried out quietly, "Alas, a brother will strike his brother. Was it destined that the ancient times should be repeated?" Enlil was explaining to them a secret of the old times. He was delivering the terror weapons into their hands. They released a brilliance filled with terror. Everything they touched turned into a heap of dust. They had falsely sworn that the earth would not rise against brother fighting brother, that no region would be harmed. But the oath was broken. It had shattered into useless pieces like a cracked jar. With exuberant joy, the two sons hurriedly left Enlil's chamber and set out in search of weapons. The other gods returned to their cities. None of them had any premonition of their own disaster. Now this is the story of those ancient times and of the terror weapons. Before the former ages there was the beginning. After the former ages there came the old times. In the old times the gods came to earth and created the earthlings. In the former times none of the gods were on earth. The earthlings had not yet been formed. In the former ages the abode of the gods was on their own planets. Its name was Nibiru. A great planet, Nibiru, with a reddish brilliance, makes a long circuit around the sun. For a while Nibiru is shrouded in cold. In the other half of its orbit the sun heats it strongly. A thick atmosphere, continuously fed by volcanic eruptions, envelops Nibiru. This atmosphere supports every kind of life. Without it there would be nothing but death. During the cold period it holds Nibiru's inner heat around the planet like a constantly renewed warm cloak. During the warm period it shields Nibiru like a barrier against the scorching rays of the sun. It holds back and then releases the rains. It swells the lakes and streams. Our atmosphere nourishes and protects lush vegetation. In its waters and soils, all kinds of life burst forth. After many, many long ages, our species sprouted, a seed eternal, produced by our very essence. As our numbers increased, our ancestors spread to many regions of Nibiru. Some tilled the soil, some tended to four-footed creatures, some lived in the mountains, others settled their homes in the valleys. Rivalries arose, some ventured too near the borders. Collisions occurred, and staffs became weapons. The clans gathered into tribes, and then two great nations came face to face. The northern nation took up arms against the southern nation. What was held in the hand turned into missiles that were launched. The roaring and flashing weapons increased the terror. A long and fierce war engulfed the entire planet. Brothers warring against brothers amassed. In both the north and the south, there was death and devastation. For many orbits, devastation reigned over the land. All life had been extinguished. Then a ceasefire was declared. After that, peace negotiations began. The envoys said to one another, "Let the nations unite. Let there be one person on the throne of Nibiru, a king who will rule over everyone. Whether he comes from the north or the south, let him be determined by Lot, the most supreme king. If he is from the north, then let he take as his consort, as his equal, a queen from the south. If he is chosen from the south, then by Lot his wife shall be a woman from the north. Let them be husband and wife, forming one body. Their firstborn son shall be the heir to the throne. Thus a united dynasty will be established, and unity will reign forever upon Nibiru." In the very midst of the ruins, peace began. The north and the south united through the bond of marriage. The royal throne merged into one body, and an uninterrupted series of kingdoms was established. The first king after peace was a warrior of the north, a valiant commander. He was chosen by a fair and just lot. The declaration of unity was accepted. For his dwelling he built a magnificent city. Its name was Agad, meaning unity. For his reign he was granted a royal title, An, which means the celestial one. By force he restored order throughout the lands. He proclaimed laws and decrees. He appointed governors for each country. Their first task was to rebuild and render the lands fit for cultivation. The royal annals recorded of him, An, who united the countries and brought peace to Nibiru. He built a new city. He repaired the canals. He provided food for the people, and the lands were bountiful. He chose for himself a girl from the south as his consort, one renowned both for her love and her martial prowess. Her royal title was Antu, meaning consort of An. This name was most wisely given to her. She bore him 3 sons and 1 daughter. He named his first son Ankai, meaning solid foundation through An. The son sat alone on the throne. The selection of a consort was postponed twice. During his reign, concubines were brought into the palace. Yet he had no son. Thus began a dynasty that was interrupted by the death of Ankai. By the rule, he had no offspring to ascend the throne. Though not the firstborn, the middle son was declared the legal heir. He was one of 3 brothers. Since his youth, his mother affectionately called him Ib, meaning the one in the middle. According to the royal annals, he was called an Ib, meaning celestial in the kingdom, and across generations, the son of An. Following his father An, he ascended to the throne of Nibiru. By count, he was the 3rd king to do so. He chose his younger brother's daughter as his consort. She was called Nin-Ib, the consort of Ib. An-Danabi and Nin-Nabi had a son. He was the heir to the throne, the fourth king by count. He desired his royal title to be known as An-Shar-Gal, meaning An's prince, the greatest of princes. His stepsister, his consort, Ki-Shar-Gal, was likewise named. Knowledge and understanding were the king's foremost ambitions. He studied the methods of the heavens with great diligence. He investigated the great orbit of Nibiru. He determined its length to be 1 shar. This measure was Nibiru's year. Henceforth, royal reigns would be counted and recorded by it. He divided the shar into 10 parts. From then on, he proclaimed 2 festivals to be celebrated. When Nibiru was closest to the sun, the festival of heat would be celebrated. When Nibiru reached its furthest corner, the festival of cold would be proclaimed. In place of all the old festivals of tribes and nations, 2 festivals uniting the people were established. He determined the laws governing husbands and wives, sons and daughters. Because of the wars, the number of men had diminished and women came to predominate. He declared that a man could have more than one wife to learn. According to the law, one official consort would be chosen and called the first wife. By law, the firstborn son was the heir of his father. Soon confusion arose. If the firstborn was not born of the first wife, but later the first wife bore a son, a man who, by law, would be the legal heir, who would then ascend the throne? By the count of the shar, is it the firstborn son, or the son born of the first wife, the first son, the legal heir? Who would inherit the legacy? Who would be the successor? During the reign of An-Shar-Gal, Ki-Shar-Gal was declared the first wife. She was one of the king's stepsisters. During the reign of An-Shar-Gal, concubines were once again brought into the palace. These concubines also bore sons and daughters for the king. One son born from a concubine was the firstborn. The first son was born of a concubine. Then Ki-Shar-Gal bore a son. By law, he was not the legal heir. He was not the firstborn. In the palace, the angry shouts of Ki-Shar-Gal rang out. If, according to the rules, my son born of the first wife is to be disqualified from succession, then let the double seed not be neglected. Even if we were born of different mothers, the king and I are children of the same father. Therefore, my son carries our father Anib's double seed. Henceforth, the law of the seed shall take precedence over the law of consorts. From now on, whenever a son is born of a stepsister, let him be regarded as superior in succession to all other sons. Deep in thought, An-Shar-Gal pondered and yielded to the law of the seed, embracing it. With this, confusion arising from consorts and concubines, from marriages and divorces, will be avoided. In the assembly, the royal advisors adopted the law of the seed for succession. By the king's command, the scribes recorded this decree. Thus, the next king to ascend the throne according to the law of the seed was declared. He was given the royal title An-Shar. He was the 5th king to ascend the throne. Now this is the story of the reign of An-Shar and the kings who followed him. When the law changed, the other princes consented. They were told but did not rebel. An-Shar took his stepsister as his consort. He made her the first wife. She was to be called Ki-Shar. Thus the dynasty continued with this law. During Ashar's reign, the yields of the fields weakened, and the bounty of fruits and grains diminished. From one orbit to the next, as Nibiru approached the sun, the heat increased. In the distant dwelling, the coolness was even more scarce. In Agadi, the capital of the throne, the king gathered those with great understanding. Scholars, well-educated and of great knowledge, were commanded to inquire. They examined the country and the lands and tested the lakes and streams. Some answered, "It has happened before." In the past, Nibiru had either cooled or heated even more. A fate was inscribed in Nibiru's orbit. The other knowledgeable ones who observed its orbit did not consider blaming Nibiru for its fate. According to what they found, a disruption had occurred in the atmosphere. The volcanoes, which formed the shield of the atmosphere, were spewing less smoke. Nibiru's air had thinned. Its protective shield had lost strength and become weak. During the reign of An-Shar and Ki-Shar, a plague afflicted the fields, and no matter how hard they labored, it was in vain. Then their son An-Shar ascended the throne. He was the 6th king of the dynasty. His name meant the majestic Lord of the Shar. He was born with great understanding, having learned much and acquired abundant knowledge. He sought remedies for calamities. He thoroughly examined Nibiru's celestial orbit. Within the loop he drew, he embraced the 5 members of the sun's family. Those planets of dazzling beauty. To find remedies for the calamities, Enshar examined their atmospheres. He gave each one a name to honor their ancestors. He regarded them as celestial couples. To the first two, planets resembling twins, he gave the names An and Antu. Beyond Nibiru's orbit were Anshar and Kishar, whose dimensions were the greatest. Among the others, one that wandered like a messenger was called Gaga. Sometimes Nibiru encountered it first by that name. All those who circled the sun and saluted Nibiru numbered 5. Beyond these, as if marking a boundary, a beaten bracelet revolved around the sun. It guarded it as though it were the keeper of the forbidden region of the heavens filled with disaster. The number of the other children of the sun was 4, and the bracelet served as their shield against uninvited guests. Enshar then set out to examine the atmospheres of the 5 that emerged to greet him. In successive orbits, they were carefully scanned along Nibiru's 5 loops. Their atmospheric compositions were observed and intensely examined with celestial chariots. The findings left the scholars dumbfounded, and the discoveries perplexed their minds. From one orbit to the next, the deterioration in Nibiru's atmosphere worsened further. In the councils of the wise, remedies were fervently debated, and ways to mend the wound were hurriedly reviewed. An initiative to envelop the planet with a new shield was undertaken. All that was thrown upward descended to the ground. In the assembly of the scholars, the erupting volcanoes were examined. The atmosphere had been formed by erupting volcanoes, and its wound had emerged from the weakening of their eruptions. A group of scholars declared, "Let us invent something to encourage new eruptions. Let us cause the volcanoes to vomit again." None could inform the king how this might be done, or by what means the eruption would be achieved. During Enshar's reign, the gap in the heavens grew even larger. The rain ceased, the wind blew more fiercely, and they could not rise from the springs and depths. A curse had befallen the lands. The mother's breasts had dried up. There was unrest in the palace. The curse had taken hold there as well. Enshar chose as his first wife a stepsister, as mandated by the law of the seed. She was called Ninshar, meaning wife of the Shars. She bore no son. A son was born of a concubine to Enshar. He was the firstborn. His first wife and stepsister Nindot Shar did not bear a son. According to the law of succession, the son of the concubine ascended the throne. He was the 7th king. His royal title was Du Uru, meaning formed in the abode. Truly, he was born not in the palace, but in the concubine's quarters. Du Uru took as his consort a girl he had loved since his youth. She was chosen not because of the first wife's seed, but out of love. Her royal title became Du Uru, meaning the woman who is by my side. In the palace, minds became greatly confused. The sons were heirs, yet the consorts were not stepsisters. Suffering in the land increased. The bounty of the fields was forgotten, and fertility among the people diminished. There was no abundance in the palace. Neither sons nor daughters were born. 7 rulers descended from An's seed had come and gone, but then his seed on the throne had withered. At the palace entrance, Dauru found a child. She embraced him as her son. In the end, Du-Uru also adopted him as his son, declared him the legal heir, and he was called Lama, meaning barrenness. In the palace, the princes murmured. The council of advisors complained. Finally, Lama ascended the throne, though not of An's seed, and became the 8th king. In the assemblies of the learned, 2 proposals were put forward to remedy the gap. One was to use a metal called gold. On Nibiru, this metal was very scarce, yet within the inner part of the beaten bracelet it was abundant. It was the only substance that could be beaten into the finest dust. Once it reached the heights of the heavens, it would remain suspended in the air. Thus, the gap would be repeatedly filled and closed, providing better protection. Celestial ships could be built, bringing a celestial fleet of gold to Nibiru. The others said, "Let us create terror weapons. Weapons that would shake the earth, loosen it, split and shatter mountains. Let us launch missiles at volcanoes, set their inertia into motion so that their eruptions increase. The atmosphere is renewed and the gap completely disappears." Lama was too weak to decide. He did not know which option to choose. Nibiru completed 1 orbit and Nibiru continued counting 2 shars. The calamity in the fields did not diminish. The eruptions of the volcanoes did not restore the atmosphere. The 3rd shar passed and the 4th was being counted. Gold had not been obtained. Conflict in the land increased, food and water dwindled. Unity in the country broke down. Accusations steadily increased. Scholars went back and forth in the palace. Advisors continuously entered and exited. The king heeded none of their words. He listened only to his wife, Lahama. "If this is fate," said the woman, "then let us beg and plead to the great creator of everything. Our only hope lies not in pleading and begging, but in taking action." In the palace, the princes grew restless, directing their accusations toward the king. Instead of remedies, they foolishly and irrationally summoned even greater disasters. Weapons were drawn from the old storehouses. Rebellion was the most talked about matter. The first in the palace to take up arms was a prince. He made promises and incited the other princes as well. His name was Alalu. "Let Lama no longer be king," he shouted. "Let decision replace indecision. Come, let us shake the king's trust in his realm. Let us make him relinquish the throne." The princes heeded his words and rushed to the palace gate. They attacked the throne room like cascading waters, assaulting its forbidden entrance. The king fled to the palace tower. Alalu pursued him. A clash occurred in the tower, and Lama fell from it and died. "Lama is no more," cried Alalu. With exuberance and joy, he proclaimed, "The king is dead." Alalu, who drove the others into the throne room, established himself on the throne. Without legal right or the decision of the council, he proclaimed himself king. In the land, unity had been lost. Some rejoiced at Lama's death, while others grieved what Alalu had done. Now this is the story of Alalu's kingdom and his descent to earth. In the land, unity had been lost, and many suffered in the matter of kingship. In the palace, the princes were in turmoil, and in the council, the advisors were sorrowful. From an onward, succession had passed from father to son. Even the eighth Lama had been declared an adopted son. And who was Alalu? Was he the legal heir, the firstborn? By what right had he seized power? Was he not a regicide? Alalu was summoned before the 7 judges. His fate was to be decided there. "May my lineage be ascribed to Anshargal," he declared before the judges. "My ancestor was his son, born of a concubine named Alam." In the reckoning of the Shars, Alam was the firstborn. The throne belonged to him. The queen who became pregnant disregarded his rights. Out of nothing, he issued the law of the seed and granted the kingdom to his own son. He disinherited Alam from the kingdom. Instead, he bestowed it upon his son. "I am of Alam's enduring lineage. Anshargal's seed lives within me." The 7 judges listened carefully to Alalu's words. They conveyed the matter to the council of advisors, so that it might be determined whether it was truth or fabrication. The royal annals, retrieved from the House of Records, were brought forth and read with great care. The first royal couple was An and Antu. They had 3 sons and no daughters. The first son, Anki, died on the throne without leaving offspring. In his stead, the middle son ascended the throne. His name was Anib. Anshargal was his first son. He ascended to the throne. After him, the rule that the firstborn ascends did not continue. The law of succession was replaced by the law of the seed. The firstborn, being the son of a concubine, was disinherited from the kingdom according to the law of the seed. The kingdom was bestowed upon the son of Kishargal, the king's stepsister. That was the reason. The annals made no mention of the concubine's son, the firstborn. "I am of his lineage," Alalu shouted to the advisors. According to the law of succession, the kingdom belonged to him. According to that law, the kingdom is now my right. The skeptical advisors demanded that Alalu swear an oath of truth. Alalu swore upon the living and the dead. The assembly now recognized him as king. They called the elders, gathered the princes, and in their presence announced the decision. Among the princes, a young prince stepped forward. He wished to say a few words regarding the kingdom. "Succession must be re-examined," he said to those assembled. "Though I am neither the firstborn nor a son born of a queen, I come from a pure seed. The essence of An is preserved within me. No concubine has watered it." The advisors listened to his words in amazement. The young prince moved closer to the assembly. They asked him his name. "It is Anu," he replied. "I have been given the name of my grandfather, An." They inquired into his lineage, and he reminded them that An had 3 sons. Anki was the firstborn. He died without leaving a son or daughter. Anib, the middle son, ascended the throne in place of Anki. Anib had taken his younger brother's daughter as his consort. His lineage had been recorded in the annals ever since. Who was this youngest son, born from one of the purest seeds of An and Antu? The advisors looked at one another in curiosity. "My name is Inuru," Anu informed them. "He was my ancestor." His wife, Ninuru, was his stepsister, and his son was the firstborn. They named him Anima. His wife, also a stepsister, bore a son to Anima according to the laws of seed and succession. Thus the generations came from this pure lineage, flawless according to law and seed. My parents honored our ancestor An by giving me the name Anu. We were deposed from the throne, yet we were never deposed from An's pure seed. Many advisors shouted, "Long live King Anu!" Others said, "Let us be cautious. Let us prevent strife and not shatter unity." They summoned Alalu to the assembly and recounted their findings. Alalu extended his embracing arm to Prince Anu and said, "Even if we come from different offspring, our lineages come from one father. Let us live together in harmony so that abundance and prosperity may return to Nibiru. Let me remain on the throne, and let you be my successor." Then he addressed the assembly, "Let Anu be the crown prince, and allow that he be my successor." He then bowed respectfully before the assembly and announced, "I will be Alalu's consort, his designated successor. One of my sons shall choose one of his daughters as his bride." That was the decision of the assembly. It was recorded in the royal annals accordingly, and so Alalu remained on the throne. He gathered the wise, the scholars, and the commanders, and consulted them. He compiled a vast amount of knowledge to decide. He decreed, "Let celestial ships be built. Let gold be sought within the beaten bracelet." The ships were shattered and crushed within the beaten bracelet. None returned. Again he commanded, "Let the terror weapons cut open the depths of Nibiru, and let the volcanoes erupt once more." The chariots that ascended to the heavens were armed with terror weapons. Terror missiles hurled from the skies struck the volcanoes. When great flashes burst forth accompanied by heavenly thunder, the mountains shook and the valleys trembled. There were many rejoicing in the land. There was the expectation of abundance and prosperity. In the palace, Anu was Alalu's consort. He clung to Alalu's feet, handing Alalu the cup of wine. Alalu was king. He treated Anu as though he were a servant. In the land, the number of those rejoicing diminished. The rains had yet to come, and the winds had grown harsher. The eruptions of the volcanoes did not increase, nor did the gap in the atmosphere close. Nibiru continued its orbit through the heavens. From one orbit to the next, the heat and the cold became increasingly unbearable. The people of Nibiru ceased to revere their kings. They were left miserable instead of being provided relief. Alalu remained on the throne. Among the princes, the foremost, the strong and wise Anu stood before him. He clung to Alalu's feet, handing Alalu the cup of wine. For a period counted as 9, Alalu reigned as king on Nibiru. In the 9th Shar, Anu declared war on Alalu. Bare, unarmed, he challenged Alalu fist to fist. "Let the king be the one who wins," declared Anu. In the center of the arena they grappled. The door frames and walls shook. Alalu knelt. He lay face down upon the ground. Alalu was defeated in this contest. Anu was acclaimed and declared king. While Anu was escorted to the palace in a convoy, Alalu did not return to the palace. He slipped away secretly among the crowds. He was afraid of dying like Lama. Without anyone's knowing, he sped away in place of the celestial chariots. He climbed into a missile-launching vehicle and then closed its cover behind him. He entered the front compartment and took the commander's seat. He activated the guiding light. As a bluish radiance filled the room, he mixed the firestones, their hum as mesmerizing as music. He energized the vehicle's large power connector. It radiated a reddish brilliance. Unbeknownst to anyone, Alalu fled from Nibiru within the celestial ship. Alalu set his course toward the dark earth, having chosen this target for a reason tied to an ancient secret.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest content. We've got plenty more exciting videos coming your way, so stay tuned and we'll see you in the next one.